Hello everyone. This video will be of particular interest to cherry growers because in it you will learn how you can never have a bad year, achieve higher profitability, and a 2 to 3 year return on investment using the retractable roof production system for cherries. To start off with, what prevents you from increasing your profitability? Do you need warmer temperatures to advance flowering? Or do you need cooler temperatures to delay flowering and the harvest? What causes reduction in your profitability? Are you growing in the open field or in traditional rain shelters? Because your yield will be affected by chill hours, pollination, abortion, frost, and hail, as well as fruit splitting, small fruit sizes, soft fruit, low brix, or double fruiting. And at harvest time, is it getting harder to find pickers, and is uneven ripening causing harvest inefficiencies? And these problems can occur whether you're growing in the open field or under a traditional rain shelter. The overview of this presentation is I will show you the lower cost auto dry motorized rain shelter system, then identify the key differences between auto dry and the X-frame retractable roof, and then go into details on the retractable roof production system for cherries. And finally, have a brief discussion on calculating the impact on profitability and return on investment from using climate optimization and weather protection with the auto dry motorized rain shelter system. So here's a quick introduction into auto dry.
Are your crops under constant threat from extreme weather? Now there's a better way to take back control of your harvest and your profits with Cravo's new low-cost retractable rain shelter system, Auto Dry. Auto Dry can respond automatically to fast-changing weather, covering field or orchard crops in minutes, shielding them from damaging rain, hail, cold, heat, and wind. By merging the power of a protective cover, together with all the benefits of the natural outdoor environment, Cravo's industry-leading design gives you a powerful tool to boost the market value of your crops with less labor and less chemicals. Auto Dry's enhanced heat retention capabilities make it possible to optimize temperature and humidity so you can advance or delay your harvest, increase your yield and quality, and hit those premium price windows more often and more sustainably. The Auto Dry system is a cost-effective choice for protecting large areas, with one motor powering almost 1 hectare or 2 acres of roofs. A 10-hectare or 25-acre installation requires only 16 kilowatts of power to close the entire roof in only 4 to 6 minutes, making it possible to power remote fields or orchards using only generators or solar panels. The Auto Dry system is easy to install over new fields or existing orchards, with posts being tilted up onto screw-in augers. The results of using Auto Dry? Larger, firmer, sweeter fruit, with less blemishes and less chemical residues, right when buyers are ready to pay the highest prices. So, if you're ready to take back control of your harvest, your profits, and your future, make Cravo's Auto Dry system your partner in crop protection and climate optimization.
So auto dry has already been tested against extreme weather conditions of rain, hail, and wind. And here you can see a test where auto dry was closed at wind gusts of 64 kilometers per hour. And it's also been exposed to hailstorms. Now, one of the questions we get is what's the key differences between auto dry and X-frame? Auto dry does not have a gutter to collect rainwater, and it uses traditional rain shelter roof coverings, whereas the X-frame does have a gutter to collect water and uses Cravo's longer lasting retractable roof coverings. So I'm now going to take you through the retractable roof production system for cherry production. This system has been developed over the last 10 years. And we've done that by collecting the positive and negative experiences of cherry producers, growers who are using no protection, so open field cherries, those that have used traditional rain shelter coverings, those of you that have used tunnels, and automatic retractable roof houses. The objective of the production system is to increase your profitability by preventing the weather-related problems of the open field orchard and the climatic problems created under a rain shelter or tunnel coverings. Now, weather protection strategies are very simple. You close hectares of roofs in minutes when you have frost, rain, hail, and strong winds. And this is quite easy to understand that we're just going to protect the crops when we have damaging weather. But in the retractable roof production system, the objectives may be to advance or delay the harvest while maximizing fruit firmness and brix, increasing the tons per hectare of number one quality fruit, increasing the fruit size since the revenue per kilo goes up as the fruit size goes up, and finally to ensure uniform ripening so that the complete tree can be harvested at once. So what we're really doing is we're going to use the retractable roof production system to optimize the climate throughout the year. So the climate optimization strategies are increase chill hours where required, advance or delay flowering, whichever one will help you get the best market prices, how to create the best pollination, the best climate for pollination, how to prevent abortion when temperatures suddenly rise several weeks after pollination, how to optimize plant temperatures and transpiration to maximize fruit size and firmness during the cell division and expansion stage, how to increase calcium accumulation and maximize fruit firmness during the harvest. And the last one is the one that most cherry growers don't think of after harvest, and that is to maximize photosynthesis and prevent sun damage to new spurs and improve water efficiency post-harvest. And we'll be talking a fair bit about this stage. Now, over the last 10 years, the key learning is that to influence the harvest timing and maximize the number, size, and firmness in fruit, it is critical to maximize light levels while optimizing plant temperatures and transpiration rates. In very simple terms, we can say we want to warm up the trees and the soil when they are cold, and we want to cool down the trees when they are too hot or losing too much water. Your desired harvest timing has the biggest influence on your climate manipulation strategy. Do we want to advance the harvest 1 to 3 weeks while ensuring that fruit is firm so that we can get the premium prices? Or are we in the middle of the season where the focus is on size, total yield of number one quality? Or are we trying to delay the harvest again, while ensuring that fruit is firm and has a high brix content. Now, given that Chile is the largest cherry producer in the world, understanding their harvest chart on availability really will tell us that the March-April timeframe is when there's basically no cherries available in the world because California has not started yet. And after the northern places like British Columbia have stopped harvesting in August, again, we've got gaps in the market in September or October. So the real sweet spot is to either delay the harvest or advance the harvest, depending on where you're located, in order to try to get those higher price windows. So the first thing is we want to increase chill hours in certain locations. And to increase chill hours, we want to retract the roof at night to maximize heat loss and retract the roof during the daytime as well when it's overcast. And it is very beneficial to have the walls open during this time because the wind will help create additional chill hours as opposed to having a still environment if the walls are closed. However, high sun radiation during the winter causes a reduction in chill hours since the direct sunlight heats up the tree and soil. So when I was in Curicó, Chile, in September the 4th, 2018, the air temperature was 28 degrees, and this is when they're still before flowering. And we could see that the tree temperature, the trunk of the tree was 38 degrees when the air temperature was 23. So we've got a 13-degree increase in the tree temperature simply because of the sun radiation warming up the tree, and that's going to contribute to a reduction in chill hours. Now, down in Australia, when we monitor the effect of a rain cover on the tree, the air temperature was 7 degrees, and under the rain cover, the tree was 7.8 degrees, but in full sun, the tree was 20.5. And so we can clearly see that there's a significant impact on the temperature of the tree, depending on whether it's exposed to direct sunlight or not. What you'll see during this presentation is that we really believe that we should be measuring and managing the climate based on the plant temperature, not based on the air temperature. Because if you looked at air temperature of 7 degrees, you would have no idea that the tree itself was 20.5 or 38. So blocking direct sunlight is a positive when we're trying to increase chill hours, but can be a negative when we're trying to advance flowering since it keeps the soil cold. Now, after the chill hours have been reached, then we want to close the walls and the roof to accumulate heat, just like a greenhouse. And when you look at the difference between a traditional rain shelter covering and auto dry, you can see here how the roofs are connected in the valleys on auto dry, creating a much better thermal barrier to trap the heat, whereas in a traditional rain shelter covering, you've got a big gap in the valley from which to lose heat. And here you can see one of the tests we did where we had the roofs closed at night. They were closed 100%. There's no walls. And you can see that there's no frost inside the building, even though there's frost on the grass outside. And so what this is showing is that by creating a closed roof covering, you can actually have a greater degree of frost protection or heat retention. And if you want to increase the amount of heat you retain, then installing some seasonal poly walls around the perimeter or installing motorized roll-up curtains will then close the perimeter in combination with the roof to help create that warmer temperature through the night, which will help with the advancement of flowering. Now, for those that are trying to understand when would X-Frame be better as an investment than auto dry, the fundamental difference between the two is that with auto dry, you can see here how the rain is falling onto the ground. whereas an X frame is being collected in the gutter. What that means is when we're closing the roof to accumulate heat, in auto dry, the rain will be falling into the house, onto the ground, which is going to make the soil wet, make the soil colder, and increase the humidity inside. Whereas in an X frame, the fact that there's a gutter system, it will collect the rainwater so that you do not have the chilling or humidifying effect of rain. The challenge with X frame, it's significantly more expensive in auto dry, so it will really only have a good return on investment if you have a very high premium for being early with your crop. Now, one of the key learnings from talking to growers, both in retractable roofs and under traditional rain covers, it's really critical to monitor soil temperatures around the roots to make sure that the roots are becoming active. And if soil temperatures are too cold, then retracting the roof during high sunlight hours will warm up the soil quickly because the sun will just reach the soil and increase soil temperatures. If you have a black plastic mulch, that will also help transfer the heat from the sun into the soil. And fruit abortion is a major risk several weeks after pollination, and this occurs particularly if the roots are still cold. So if you have roots that are colder, it's critical that you irrigate more to make sure that you have high water availability to the root system, so that when the leaves start to come out and the transpiration occurs, that the root system's able to supply water. Now, if you want to delay flowering, again, you would expose the trees to nighttime cold temperatures and then prevent the warming in the daytime of the shoots and roots. So if the roofs are retracted at night and then you have strong sunlight in the morning, you would be closing the roof 95% to trap the nighttime cold and to prevent the direct sunlight from warming the trees. Then when the inside air temperatures are warmer than outside, you can retract the roofs and the walls completely to put the trees back into an outdoor condition. And then if it's really sunny and the tree temperatures are becoming too high, then again, close the roofs 85% and open the walls to prevent the warming of the tree. For those who are interested in delaying, there's really no benefit to having a wall covering because you're really not trying to warm up the tree, you're trying to keep it cold. So keeping the walls open all the time from a cooling point of view will be a major benefit. Now, if you are interested in delaying, then looking at what roof covering color, you have options when you're using auto dry because the roof is motorized and retractable. So you could be using a white roof covering, a gray roof covering, or a black roof covering, whichever one is going to create the desired effect. And this next video was taken just January 2024 in Osorno, Chile. And I'm going to show you how the effect of a tall row of trees caused a 14-day delay in the harvest of the cherries. And what this is telling us is if we can use auto dry to manipulate the hours of daylight or sun and the strength of the sunlight, we can intentionally delay the flowering and then slow down the ripening in order to try to have cherries at the time of the year when either no one has them available or there's very limited supply. It's January the 22nd and we are in Osorno, Chile. And one of the topics of discussion is how to delay the ripening period to delay the harvest. And so we have an interesting opportunity here to observe the effect of a tall row of trees on the tree development and the fruit development. So this is a 3-year-old Cordia variety, and away from the tree row they harvested 5 tons per hectare, and the entire tree row flowered at the same time. So both the area with full sun and the area shaded by the tree had the same flowering time. Now this tree row is on the west side of the field, which means this tree row is now shading these trees during the afternoon. And so here away from the trees, we do not have a lot of canopy development, but as we move closer to the tree row, you can see the amount of vegetative growth here is increasing because we have less light caused by the tree row. The second effect is as we get closer to the trees, we can see here that they still have to harvest. And so the effect of this tree row is that the harvest was delayed approximately 15 days. And so for those growers that want to delay the harvest, using a retractable covering that's either gray, white, or black, we can simulate the effect of this tree row by cutting down the amount of direct sunlight that's hitting the trees. So looking at the whole system holistically, if we are able to retract the roof when the conditions are optimum, we're going to get more light, more photosynthesis, more transpiration, more energy, more calcium going into the fruit. We then will be closing the roof when we want to reduce the amount of heat and light to slow down the ripening process. At harvest time, this gives us the additional benefit that if we retract the roof at night, we're going to cool the fruit more, which is going to help with the brix accumulation. But also the soil, the tree, the fruit will be cooler, so that when we're in harvest, we want to be able to extend the number of hours that the harvest can occur. So by cooling the fruit at night, we get more brix. Closing the white, gray, or black roof during the harvest time, we will be keeping the fruit cooler, which means they could actually increase the number of hours or extend the number of hours in the day that they're harvesting. So for those growers who find it beneficial to be able to delay, an automatic retractable rain shelter covering with a darker color will be a very effective tool at helping to delay the harvest while still maintaining fruit firmness. So if you wanted to change the color of the covering, a simple way is just to apply a paint, a gray, white, or black paint to the auto dry roof covering. The next stage is pollination. And without good pollination, you don't need to worry about rain protection because you won't have any fruit.
Oh, it's crazy outside. As you can see, still we have bloom. I don't know what's left on the tree for cherries outdoor, but definitely we got cherries inside the greenhouse. God bless our farmers and their hard work. But no one has an answer this year what we're going to have left after this weather on the cherries and apple for outdoor.
Now, during the pollination stage, to maximize the pollination potential, the roof and walls need to be positioned in such a way that they're protecting trees from rain, dew, and strong winds. And target a 50% humidity with air temperatures of between 16 and 23 degrees, because that's going to maximize pollen viability and also bee activity. And because bees use UV for navigation, it's always beneficial if you can have some direct sunlight coming into the structure, because it will help the bees be more comfortable and to navigate their way around. Now, one of the key learnings over the last 10 years is that during the pollination period, the roof and wall positions really require close monitoring by the production manager and cannot really be automated. I believe very strongly that during this stage, the production manager should be inside the house every hour of the daytime and deciding whether the roof should be closed 90%, 80%, 70%, retracted completely, walls open, wall closed, whatever we can do to create those optimum conditions for pollination. Now, the other key learning, though, is if you create too closed of an environment too much, then that will reduce bee activity and can cause pollen to become too sticky. And then all of a sudden, you've got a pollination problem that you cannot recover from. Now, if the tree is covered constantly, then uneven flowering can occur. And that will cause uneven ripening, which will then cause an increase in the number of harvest cycles. So it's not just making sure that you got the flowers to be pollinated, it's also trying to get as short of a pollination time as possible so that the fruit is all ripening at the same time. The next stage is cell division and cell expansion. And fruit size and firmness can only be maximized if light and transpiration is optimized. Roofs should only be closed if trees need to be protected from excessive rain, hail, strong winds, or excessive heat. And if you have no adverse conditions outside, then you're going to get larger fruit, firmer fruit, if there's no roof covering over the tree. Now, for those who have used rain covers in the past, one of the problems is 3 to 4 weeks after pollination, sometimes we see that the trees abort 30% of the fruit. And this next video is going to show you quite clearly the difference in the tree behavior and the fruit load, depending on whether it was exposed to the direct sunlight or whether it was constantly covered by a rain shelter cover. We're now looking at Lebens on a colt rootstock using KGB. And again, we're seeing the same pattern here. So we have the rain shelter that was closed for 4 weeks after pollination. And when we look at the fruit load here, we can see there's a good fruit load up all of the stems. The moment we go 2 trees in, we can see that the fruit load is less because they had approximately 30% abortion, which occurred 4 weeks after pollination. So again, this is most likely caused by the fact that the air temperature is getting high underneath the rain shelter, which is causing the transpiration to go up, but the plastic is keeping the root temperatures cold, and so the root system is not able to supply sufficient water to the leaves when there is a high transpiration rate, and this is causing the plant to then choose to abort in order to preserve its water supply. So this is a frequent problem, and when you ask growers why that happens, you tend to get a lot of different answers or theories, but not a lot of facts. And so what we started to do is really think about 2 things. What is the plant temperature? What is the root temperature? What's the transpiration? And what's the potential water supply? And so when that rain shelter cover is over top of the tree all the time, it's going to get very hot in there. That's going to cause the trees to start to lose lots of water through transpiration. Now, I'm going to show you a short video where you can see a change in the soil temperature depending on whether the soil was exposed to the direct sunlight or whether it was sheltered from the direct sunlight by the rain shelter covering blocking. And I want you to look closely at the change in the root temperature, because 4 weeks after pollination, the soil is still cold. And watch the change in the soil temperature and think about how active are the roots 4 weeks after pollination, depending on the soil temperature. So here in direct sun, the soil temperature was 58 degrees Celsius, and under the rain shelter covering, it was only 34. Go back several weeks to when the abortion happened, the soil temperature say 15 centimeters down is going to be cold. And now you can see how the soil temperature will change in this next video. So here we got 60 up to 64, 66 degrees in full sun. And we just go 30, 40 centimeters away under the rain shelter cover and it dropped to 35 degrees. This video was taken in November. If you go back into October, late September, that soil temperature under the covering is going to be extremely cool. And we believe that this abortion is because the roots are too cold. The roots are not able to warm up because the rain shelter covering is blocking the sun. Roots are not warm enough. They're not pumping. And so then the tree goes into a water stress condition and chooses to abort in order to preserve its water availability. The next stage is maximizing fruit size and firmness. And very simply, the more light, the better. But if we get excessive transpiration or fruit temperatures, that's going to cause smaller fruit and sunburn on the fruit. So we're going to lose size and we're going to lose yield of number one quality if the temperatures get too high. And here's another video taken in Chile close to harvest. It is 6:10 p.m. on November the 6th, and we are in Curicó, Chile. And we're just looking at the cherry trees that are protected from a rain shelter, but since there's no rain forecast, the rain shelter is retracted. Now that we're getting close to harvest, we can see that with this really clear blue sky, we're getting a high radiation, and that is causing the fruit temperatures to get hot. So here we are at 6:10 in the evening, and the fruit temperature is still 32 degrees. And we look at the leaves at the end of the branches, we can see the leaves are curling, and that's telling us that there's an excessive transpiration happening, and these trees are suffering from excessive water stress. And that's going to cause a reduction in the fruit size. Now here, we're underneath one of the rain shelters, and when we look at the tree here, we can see that the leaves are still laying flat. They're not curling up. And so this tree is not exposed to the same water stress as if it was in full sun all day. So if this rain shelter was closed for the extent of the growing season, that would be causing insufficient transpiration on these trees for most of the season, which would cause a reduction in fruit firmness. So if we agree that more sunlight is better, that's correct up to the point when the effect of the sunlight becomes too great. And so the moment we have excessive fruit temperatures, excessive transpiration, closing the roof 85% for several hours is going to help slow down the transpiration to help the fruit size get larger. But because we are exposing it to direct sunlight for part of the day, we're going to get the firmness and the brix of a outdoor cherry. So there's a lot of talk about calcium and how to make sure we get calcium in the fruit. And this is one of the most difficult elements to move. And the problem is that it needs a high transpiration rate in order for it to be absorbed and move. But if I have really high transpiration, then all the water from the root system is being directed to the leaves because the surface area of the leaves is much greater than the surface area of the fruit. Consequently, the calcium that's been absorbed by the roots and is moving up through the trunk and the stems to the fruit, it's actually not getting to the fruit, it's going to the leaves because most of the water is going to the leaves. So a really high transpiration can cause a lower calcium content in the fruit. Conversely, if you're in a protected environment too long, too much, now the trees are going to be experiencing low transpiration. And if you have low transpiration, that means you have a low rate of water uptake from the roots. The roots are not absorbing the calcium. They're not moving the calcium because the amount of water moving is too low. And so in reality, we can say if transpiration is too low, we have a shortage of calcium. And if transpiration is too high, we have a shortage of calcium. So what we need to do is regulate the transpiration rate in order to make sure that we get the calcium into the fruit. Now, pitting is another challenge that occurs in certain growing areas. And when you go back to what are the fundamental causes of it, mechanical damage from wind, excessive heat or water stress, and calcium. And so if you're using auto dry to protect the trees from the weather extremes, that means you're not getting the wind effects, the physical damage to the fruit. You're protecting it from the water stress because you're regulating transpiration. And if you're actually optimizing the climate by opening and closing the roof, you're going to improve the calcium uptake, which will help reduce your pitting problem. Now, for those who have a cover that basically is over the crop from just before pollination until harvest, this has the effect of creating a low transpiration rate for that tree for the entire growing season. And it's quite well known that cherries growing under this environment, you will get larger fruit, but you're also going to get soft fruit. And so for the growers that are trying to get that early harvest to get the premium prices, there's really two objectives. Number one is to get early, but number two is to get firm. And a stationary covering physiologically makes it impossible to get early and firm if the tree is also always growing in a low transpiration environment. But the second thing that happens if you cover it too much is you get uneven ripening. And so here's a video that was taken again in January of 2024 in Osorno, and we can see how does the uniformity of the ripening change between the first tree in the tree row, which was not under the rain shelter cover. And then I'm going to go several trees in, and you can see how even though it's the same tree, same genetics, same rootstock, same irrigation, the presence of the covering or the absence of a rain shelter covering is having an impact on the uniformity of the ripening. Hello, it's January 22nd and we're in Osorno, Chile, and we're going to take a close look at the Regina variety. This is a 5-year-old tree, and what we want to do is compare the fruit development from a tree that's not covered by a rain shelter to trees that are covered. So this tree is on the north side, so it's getting mostly direct sunlight. And what we can observe is that the fruit size averages 26 to 30, with the average being 28 millimeter. And the fruit is definitely firm because it has been exposed to the direct sunlight. They will be able to harvest this complete tree at once because all the fruit is maturing at about the same time. Now when we go under the cover, can see that they had a very extended flowering season here, and there's big differences in the maturity of the fruit. And this is resulting in the fact that they will have to do 2 or 3 harvests in order to pick the fruit. The average size is 22 millimeter up to 32, but the firmness of the fruit is less in here, simply because the trees have never been exposed to that direct sunlight and the high transpiration. So one of the interesting strategies we've been discussing is using the auto-dry retractable roof to help delay the harvest to get away from the peak season, but also to try to increase the size and maintain firmness with only one harvest cycle. From a financial point of view, if they can harvest everything with one cycle, they will harvest approximately 330 kilos per day, whereas when you're under the rain cover, they're only harvesting approximately 220 kilos per day. So in order to keep the pickers happy, if they could harvest all these trees at once, they could pay a lower price per kilo simply because the workers are picking more kilos in a day. So it ultimately comes down to how many Chilean pesos the harvester is earning per day. So focusing on how to get a more condensed flowering time, increasing the firmness and the size, and shortening the harvest cycles will help provide a higher revenue per hectare and ultimately a potential lower cost of harvest, which will provide a greater profitability per hectare. Now, when you do the calculation of 300 kilos per day versus 220 when you're selective harvesting, this has the impact that you need only 55 picker days if you're stripping the complete tree with one harvest, in comparison to requiring 77 pickers for one day to pick the same hectare. And so with harvest labor becoming harder to find, cost of labor going up, and also the amount of fruit that gets damaged or dropped when you're doing selective picking, being able to regulate the harvest uniformity and strip the tree in one cycle could be resulting in the fact that you need to hire 33% fewer people and manage 33% fewer people when you're able to do the complete harvest of the tree in one pick. So if I'm using the retractable roof to increase the firmness and reduce the number of pickers, I'm able to also use the roof to help cool the fruit down in 2 ways. So as I mentioned in the video, if I retract the roof at night, I'm going to cool down the fruit, the soil, the tree, and then by closing the roof when I'm going into the harvest, then I'm going to keep the sunlight off the tree and off the fruit and off the leaves to slow down the transpiration rate. And so using the roof for optimizing the climate during the harvest can increase the number of hours in the day, which means instead of picking 330 kilos, maybe we can get to 380 kilos just by being able to extend the harvest by 1 or 2 hours per day. So obviously, to maximize fruit size and quality, we want to close the roof when it's raining to protect the fruit. Very logical. That's why most people think of auto dry first as in rain protection. But then when talking to growers about the problems under rain shelters, when the rain still falls into the growing area, the problem is the rain tends to stay there and the soil stays wet. There's a bigger risk of disease. And so with the auto dry, after the rain stops, then you can retract the roof to dry out the soil. So you don't end up in this swampy kind of growing environment because of the fact that the rain shelter trapped the water in the soil. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning stage here, when we were talking about the complete growing season, after the harvest is finished, people tend to retract all their rain shelter covers, take the plastic off their polytunnels, or roll up the plastic and leave all the trees outside. And the problem is this time of the year post-harvest is when you can experience major problems with damage to the spurs, creating double fruiting. And so while the grower tends not to think about the trees after the harvest, his yield for next season is actually directly correlated to the environment that's in this post-harvest time. And so I've been told of people losing up to 30% of their fruit due to double fruiting simply because the temperature of the spur got too hot. And in this next video, I'm just going to show you what's happening to the tree from exposing it to these high sunlight periods after the harvest is finished. One of the times of the year where the auto dry could have a very beneficial effect is actually post-harvest, after all the cherries have been harvested. And so it is January the 27th right now. We're in Curacao, Chile, and the air temperature at the moment is 32 degrees. And so during this time of the year after the harvest is when we start to see sunburn to the branches and to the trunk, but also damage to the spurs, which are having an impact on the yield and the quality next season. So to give you an idea, even though it's 32 degrees, we're measuring temperatures of 43 here just from the impact of the sun radiation. So the spur is actually are 10 degrees warmer than the air temperature. In addition to that, the water stress is not just from the high transpiration rate, because we can see all the leaves are curling, but also because we're having a very high soil temperature right now due to the sun radiation. So if we look here, we're measuring 66 degrees Celsius in comparison to an air temperature of 32. And what that's doing is it's starting to warm up the root system, and when the roots get too hot, then they're not going to be as effective at pumping water. So when we're in the post-harvest situation and we're wanting these trees to accumulate a lot more energy for the next season, if we would close the auto-dry roof covering, say between 12 o'clock and 4 o'clock, when we're getting these really high temperatures on the spurs, that's going to do two things. It's going to reduce the transpiration rate because we're blocking all of the direct sunlight. The second thing we're doing is reducing the temperature of the spurs and the transpiration of the leaves. The combined effect of that should be that we see more flowers next season and less double fruiting. And at this in this area here, we've had reports of people suffering up to 30% losses from double fruiting, and this is occurring after the harvest. So normally growers are not thinking about how the tree is performing after the harvest, but yet this is the time of the year when the weather will have a big impact on the quantity and the quality of fruit in the next season. So again, to summarize, if we have really high temperatures, close the roof 80 to 85% when the leaf temperatures exceed 32 degrees Celsius, typically say from 12 until 4 p.m. to reduce the transpiration and the temperatures of the spurs and on the trunk on the west side of the tree. With some other tree crops like avocados, by closing the roof during these high radiation periods, they've seen that they were able to reduce their irrigation requirements in the summer by over 50%. And so for those of you that are located in regions where the water is becoming a constraint, being able to reduce the water irrigation requirements through the summer could have an impact on your water availability for the next season. Now, This is a really important factor for those of you that want to use the roof for climate optimization, because you'll notice through this presentation, there's been a lot of talk about blocking the sunlight, but still having good ventilation and cooling. And when you're using a X-frame or auto dry, you can see how there's a peak and a valley to the roof, and hot air tends to rise and cold air tends to fall. And so because there's an opening extending from the gutter up towards the peak, the hot air that rises up to the peak is able to exit the house through the peak, and that will help draw cooler air in down through the valley. When people try to roll up plastic on a tunnel, that is fine if you're looking for frost protection or rain protection, but the moment you want to try to use the roof covering for this cooling and light reduction, but still have good ventilation, the problem is the moment you open the vent or you close the roof to block the sunlight, but then you leave a small opening in the roof closer to the gutter, you've now created basically a greenhouse or a polyhouse. And now the temperature in the peak is going to become very high, and it's going to do damage to the tree. And so if all you're looking for is rain protection or frost protection, then rolling plastic may be suitable. But if you're really looking at climate optimization throughout the season, then there is an inherent constraint in rolling the plastic. For those that are growing cherries in locations where you have lots of birds that love your cherries, the auto dry has been designed where you can install bird net above the auto dry structure. Now, this is a really nice chart that I like that basically looks at the levels of climate control options relative to investment. So on the bottom left, you got basically hail protection, then a tunnel with stationary plastic, then a traditional rain shelter cover, then motorized auto dry, and finally X-frame. And as you move from the bottom left to the top right, the amount of investment that you make per hectare goes up, but also the level of climate optimization goes up. And so for every location around the world that's growing cherries, the question is, what's the right level of control and investment to provide a good return on investment? And so we've talked a lot about weather protection and climate optimization, and I want to show you what's the difference in the yield and quality of the cherries when you have a climate controlled, climate optimized environment using an X-frame in comparison just due to simple protection of hail net.
Welcome to Reed Fruits. It's January 20th, 2020. Just want to take you through the differences that we're seeing between the outside production under bird and hail netting versus under the retractable Cravo X-frame. So here we've got, this is cordia. So one of the issues that we're seeing in cordia is pollination. Under the Cravo, because we're optimizing the climate during pollination, we're seeing obviously very good set. And as you can see here, very clean fruit, very firm. This is still a few days off being fully ripe. But as you can see, being very clean, uniform, it's going to make the pickers pick this quite easily. Most of this could probably go straight in a box. It's first grade. Very large, so 32 mil plus, up to 40 mil we're seeing. The big thing in the yield difference, we're seeing about 17 tonne per hectare under the Cravo system, versus in the field we're about 7 tonne per hectare. And of that 7 tonne, we're seeing a lot of wind scarring, cracking from a couple of mil of rain last week. So yeah, there's a big difference in pack out, not just the quantity of fruit.
So here under the hail net, these trees are the exact same varieties, same rootstock, same planting date as those on retractable X-frame. And you can see the yields down to about 7 tons in comparison to 17 under the retractable roof. Now, in discussions with growers who are looking at planting a new orchard, we're getting into some very interesting discussions about, well, what factors would you consider if you're putting an auto dry over top of an existing orchard? And one of the things that's coming out in the discussions is the choice of rootstock. And if you're in a very hot, dry location, then you need a vigorous rootstock like Colt in order to make sure that you can supply enough water to the tree when it's in a high transpiration environment. The problem with that is that a more vigorous rootstock is going to create more canopy development. And so if you have auto dry where you can regulate the transpiration, it could allow you to use a more precocious rootstock like Gisela instead of Colt. Now, for those of you that are interested in utilizing auto dry, because we've developed 10 years of experience working with cherry under retractable roofs, we've accumulated a great amount of experience. And a lot of this information has been developed by looking at people in the open field and in traditional rain covers and in tunnels and retractable roofs. And if you really want to exploit and move quickly in your learning curve, you can take advantage of our Grower Success Program. This is a no cost, no obligation program where you can accelerate your learning by working with our Grower Success team. And so to do that, we set up a Grower Success group on WhatsApp where you can confidentially share pictures or videos and ask questions about our team. So if you're coming up to your first pollination and you want to make sure you're doing it right, then we can have a discussion about what things that you need to think about. And we are more than happy to share general learnings. Of course, anything that's been learned that's confidential will not be disclosed, but most of the things that we've learned are the general parameters on what you should be looking for, like plant temperature, root temperature, thinking about transpiration, etc. So climate optimization basically equals higher yields every year. And when you have the rapid responses to changing weather, that guarantees that you will have higher yields, especially in seasons with bad weather. And when you're in a either uncovered orchard or one with a rain shelter where you cannot easily open and close many hectares at once, you can see that the harvest per year tends to fluctuate greatly based on the weather conditions of that particular year. Whereas in auto dry, because you're able to react in minutes, you will have a more consistent harvest from one year to the next. By focusing on size, brix, firmness, and timing, you'll be able to achieve higher prices per kilo from the crops that are coming out of auto dry or X frame. And if you have higher profits per hectare and more consistent profits, that means that you have better cash flow one year to the next, which means you've got a better relationship with your bank because you're going to have more predictable incomes in order to repay any loans that you may have. Now, we've gone through many financial models with growers around the world, and the target is to try to achieve a 2 to 3 year return on investment. And even in bad years, you actually can get a faster return on investment because when the weather has been extremely adverse, like Chile had rain early in the harvest season in November 2023, when you get extreme weather conditions, that's going to reduce the supply, which means the price goes up. So whatever crop you have in auto dry just became more valuable because the crops that are not covered are no longer in the market as number one quality. So our philosophy is you pay for your investment in auto dry by increasing your profit per hectare. And so Once you have auto dry, now you can automatically protect your profits by managing the bad weather in minutes so that you don't lose. Never have a bad year. Our focus, our belief is that if you can develop a system where you never have a bad year, you're always going to be the most profitable company in the industry, because the growers that lose in a particular year now have to try to make it up and recover from those losses. Now, we've developed some quite accurate and efficient financial models for comparing cherry production in an open field or a rain shelter or in an auto dry. And these financial models can be customized to your specific region and crop so that you can understand exactly what would be the potential impact on your financials from installing auto dry over your existing orchard. And if you would like a customized copy of this return on investment calculator, then simply just contact your Cravo business development representative or send an email to sales@cravo.com. And what we will do is we will work through the ROI with you, save it, send it to you. And once you understand how it works, then you're free to modify it as you see fit so that it gives you exactly what you want, or so you can run through some different scenarios. So I'd like to thank you for taking the time to learn about the retractable roof production system using auto dry, and look forward to hearing from you in the future. Thanks again.